Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Black Phillip was just telling me to commit some heinous atrocity, but I'll stop to welcome you to another episode of the A24 Archive, the series on my channel where I talk about films in A24's catalog from the first film that they put out to the most current film that they put out. And if you can't tell, I'm a fan of this film that I'm going to be talking about today by the shirt I'm wearing or the tattoo that I have on my body based on this. I'm a very big fan of Mr. Robert Eggers. I think that he's one of the best directors currently working today. And I'm going to talk about his debut feature film, The Witch. The Witch is directed by Robert Eggers. In 1630s New England, William and Katherine lead a devout Christian life, with 5 children homesteading on the edge of an impassable wilderness. Exiled from their settlement when William defies the local church, when their newborn son vanishes and crops mysteriously fail, the family turns on one another. So I've seen this movie, I don't know, probably like 10 times, and every time I watch this movie, I find something new to appreciate about it. I think this movie builds tension and suspense and atmosphere better than virtually any movie in the past like 20 years. It's just absolutely amazing what this is able to accomplish. And it's a very simple folk tale that does so much more in questioning religion and questioning feminism and looking at human sexuality, at looking at, you know, this idea of the perceived nature of women in this time period looked at as witches or as, you know, if you didn't find your place and kind of fall into that housewife-esque persona that you were considered like a deviant. And I think Robert Eggers has a lot of really interesting ideas that he conveys in this movie. So obviously this is a breakout for Anya Taylor-Joy, who is my favorite actress right now. I think that she is absolutely brilliant. She continues to prove herself as just one of the best working actresses in all of film right now. And she plays Thomasin in this, and the entire film is looking at this world through Thomasin's lens. So as the description states, at the beginning of the film, the family is sort of like standing trial in front of the community that they live in. And essentially, the father, William, is saying that he doesn't agree with the way that they're teaching Christianity, and he feels like they're not living up to how the faith is supposed to be taught, and that he teaches his kids a certain way, and that he won't allow his kids to be brought up like this. So he decides to take his whole family and move them out of this settlement into the middle of nowhere. He builds a house, they have farm animals, they're trying to grow crops, they're trying to just live a normal life. And one day, Thomasin is outside with their young baby, and the baby is taken away. And what we see is the baby is kidnapped by a witch and is killed in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And the entire film is that we know that this evil presence is outside of where this family lives. And what is this evil capable of? While at the same time we're seeing this family sort of tear itself apart internally. And I think that's what makes this movie work so well, is this idea of like internal struggle when it comes to religion, or like I said, feminism, which I feel like feminism really is looked at as a whole here, where it's like Thomasin is this, you know, more independent kid who's like trying to do things on her own, where her mom sees her as like, you need to be a homemaker, you need to do this, you need to do that. And like when she puts into question things, even like when she questions her father about not being able to grow crops correctly or anything, she's immediately like told to be put in her place by her mother and like told that she's like a deviant, or that she could be a possible witch, which is obviously something that plays into effect here, which looks even on a larger scale when you think of like the Salem witch trials and how any woman who kind of fought against the norm at that time period could just be called a witch and burned alive just so that they could get her out of the way so that she wouldn't try to go against what the men had to say at that time period, which I think is a really fascinating sort of thing to put in this movie. And it doesn't spend a whole lot of time just talking about it expositionally, but it's all seen through the interactions of these characters. And so really early on, you could tell that the entire family, with the exception of Thomasin's little brother, who really early on is shown even like viewing her sexually, where they're like isolated out in this place and it's like they're not around anyone else, so he is expressing these feelings, and you see it through like the camera movements, but like the family puts the blame on Thomasin for that at one point in the film, which I thought was super interesting. And so the family starts to see the crops fall apart, the animals when they're milking them start to like have blood come out, and it's just like everything that they're trying to do just gets worse and worse and worse, and it blows up into this third act conclusion that is absolutely intense and just in your face, and puts into question, like towards the end of the film, this whole idea of like Black Phillip, these two little twin kids who are like the most evil kids I've ever seen in a movie, put into idea Black Phillip, who obviously we can imply a Satan or a demon or whatever, offering these like luxurious lifestyles. And like the quote from Black Phillip in this about living deliciously is like this idea of like Satan enticing people with these lifestyle choices. And I had a really interesting conversation with my friend Ray on my podcast recently about that, because I think a lot of people perceive this movie as like, if Thomasin gives into this, is she giving into evil? And I don't really see it as that. I see the end of this film more as like a liberation of her character and stepping away from this conservative lifestyle where she was supposed to be seen as just this one thing. She's seen as just this person who's going to grow up to be a homemaker or to do whatever the men in her life tell her to do. And she's kind of going away from that and doing it in her own way. And I think that that's a really interesting thing. I also find at the beginning of this film, you know, as someone I've said before that I've grown up in a conservative household, what was really interesting is that the son at the beginning of this movie is out with his dad and they're doing this hunting. And when the baby is taken away and they're trying to decide whether or not the baby died, there's a conversation between the parents about how the baby wasn't baptized when it was a baby, and so that if it died, it went to hell. And the young son makes a comment and says, how could he go to hell? He never did anything wrong. He was just a baby. And the dad like immediately snaps and acts like he said the most heinous and awful thing in the world. And that just kind of puts into question even more like the silliness of religion as a whole when it comes to those types of things. You look at a baby that is just a complete portrayal of innocence. It can't even really make decisions for itself. It relies on someone to take care of its every move. If sin existed, sin couldn't exist in something like that has no ability to act or do or even make decisions for itself. And I thought that was a really fascinating question for Eggers to put into this film as well. And this is just a true work of brilliance. I think the sound design in this is absolutely amazing. It constantly floors me every time I see it. It just really unsettles you. The Mark Corvin score to this really adds an entirely other layer of unease that kind of just puts you in this mood of just dread through the entire film. And it's just absolutely a work of brilliance. This is my favorite film I have watched in A24's catalog since I've started this revisit of the entire filmography. It's one of my favorite films in their catalog, and it always will be one of my favorite films in their catalog because Robert Eggers is a genius. And I look forward to talking about another one of his films way later on whenever I get to it, but this movie is a masterpiece. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. So have you seen The Witch? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I think this movie is brilliant. It's a work of art, has amazing performances, especially Anya Taylor-Joy, who is absolutely incredible, and it's just one of the best films ever made. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.